JKB back with another episode. Today in the show I'm reviewing Guardians of the Galaxy. Thank you to Square Enix for the review copy. I don't know about you, but when I first saw the announcement of this game and the gameplay trailer, I thought, why is this happening? The Avengers game came out to less than great reviews, and I just couldn't understand, again, why they're making the decision to go in this route and not essentially use the MCU that is well known. This is where I eat my own words and say that this is basically the best story in a comic book game, period. I don't think I've experienced anything so emotional, so well designed, so well paced as the Guardians of the Galaxy, the video game. Now, of course, you're going to be trying to draw parallels between the MCU characters and this game because you can't ignore the fact that the Guardians films are gigantic in scope, and this game actually achieves that scope in ways that I am so surprised and happy to tell you. This game is a story-driven game with, I would admit, the gameplay elements taking more of a back seat. You're going to be playing this game, and it kind of reminded me of Mass Effect, because in between the missions you get to walk around the ship and get to interact with the characters. And every single time I loaded in, I heard something new from each of the crew members on the ship. Now, let me get into how the acting is, and, the character design. Of course, we're going to have parallels between the MCU. However, I do know a little bit about the Guardians comic books, and, I'm happy to say they definitely nailed down the characters, but not in a way that you're familiar with unless you read the comics. I think the voice acting is incredible in the game. Rocket Raccoon is probably my favorite standout character, including Groot, of course. Those two you can't really go wrong with. Gamora and Star-Lord are, I wouldn't say run-of-the-mill, but they're really selling this story based on the emotions that the actors put into the voices and the motion capture. Because those things are married with an incredible story, it does really elevate the characters to something that could have been just generic design characters, because I can't say that Star-Lord and Gamora, visually speaking, are really spectacular in their design. They're very bare bones, vanilla type characters, but you really do get to know them because of the story. The pacing of this story is spectacular as well. You are going to go on so many different adventures with this crew and get to know the crew in ways you've never experienced in other games, and that's what this game really is about. Now, the weakest part of this game is the combat. As for the combat in the game, you control Star-Lord, who has a moveset that can be upgraded over time, and of course his main weapons are upgradable as well. This is it wanted to be a tactical beat-em-up game where you would go into a mission and you would command your teammates to do certain things, and I just feel like the combat is the weakest link here because it's not very deep. You can run in there and command them to do it, but it is more of an arcade sense than an actual tactical sense. I never felt like, unless I was really forced into it, that using, say, Drax's abilities really gave me an advantage at any points, maybe in the boss battles, but during the main story missions, I never felt that I was doing anything that was, strategic. I thought I was, by using, say, Groot to hold enemies in place. Yeah, you can do that, but it never felt past that, if that makes any sense. So for the most part, you'll be running into, a situation where enemies will pop out, and there's a very kind of unique idea in this game that I really do appreciate as well. You can call the team into a huddle, and if you kind of provoke them or you get them amped up enough, they will join sort of your side and agree with you that we should kick some major ass. And what happens then is all of their special abilities are supercharged, and you're able to use them without having to deal with a cool-off timer. Now, in this huddle, if you fail on motivating them, they'll just sort of say, yeah, whatever, and you go into the mission with your, timeout counter refreshing constantly. So there's a bit of a strategy there, kind of, but not really. You feel kind of lucky that you convince them to be motivated, And when you fail, you do kind of feel like, oh, I failed, I should have said the other thing. As for the level design and what you're going to be doing in this game, like I said, you can kind of roam around the ship in between all of the main chapters in the game. The chapters, I don't want to really give away how long this game is because it's imperative that if you want to play this, it's not spoiled for you. The story itself is spectacular in every regard, and it has that emotional draw that most of the comic book games out there don't have. In general, it doesn't really... There's nothing to compare it. Like, The Last of Us Part 1 had that emotional connection to the characters, and that's what you get here. You really do get a sense of this team and their dynamics over the period of this game. And that's through the writing. This is the most... I mean, I don't know what to say other than it's the best comic book story that's been put to a video game. And the levels of detail here and the levels of variety, you know, playing it over, you can make decisions. Like, I just don't want to give anything away, but there's a sort of a mission where you can make a decision on using one character or the other, and it plays out differently with amazing dialogue. And we're not talking about like a couple seconds of different dialogue here. We're talking about whole choices that come back later in the game and they say, well, remember when you did that? And they hold it against you. And it changes the dynamic of the whole game. It's that simple. That's how well written this is. There must have been a huge giant script, and this is the reason you play this game. So overall, keeping this review short and sweet, I'm going to give the game a 9 out of 10. Some of the disadvantages of this game are definitely the combat is on the basic side. It's as basic as you can get. However, it is a lot of fun. So there's a bit of a payoff in terms of when you get into the combat, but you know, most of these adventure games focus on more of the combat, and I'll bring up, like, say, Tomb Raider, any of the new Tomb Raider reboot trilogy games. When you're in those games, you have so much you can do and so many things to see, and afterwards you go through the levels and do this and that, and it's this crazy adventure game, and it's amazing as it is. This is not like that. This is more story-driven. It is very linear. Level design is slightly open at times, but there's so much to see and do, and that's what makes this game, I honestly would say, more rich in its beauty and its design and its writing, and it's something that you can go back to and it feels like you're going home. And that's very difficult to do in video games. When I play the Tomb Raider games now, I just go in there because I know that I can do a crazy bunch of stuff. I don't go back in there to listen to the story because the story is like, it's okay. It's just sort of there and it's enjoyable. I'm not knocking on that. But this is a game that if I played in my, teenage years, this is one of those games that I would continuously play over time just to hang out with the characters. That's how much I like the characters and story in this game. So overall, it's incredible and it's a must-play at any price you can get it. If it's dropping in price already, I highly suggest it to anybody out there that just like simple combat, an amazing story, an amazing conclusion, and just something that is an amazing stepping stone, because the sequel to this game could be over the top and it could be incredible. I can only imagine which direction they can go. So once again, if you're sitting around and you're not sure if you want to play a linear single-player game or which one to play, I should say, this is the game. So I'll see you on the next episode of JKB.